Now, the African National Congress is honoring the lives and legacies of three distinguished patriots, Todd Tozama Matshikiza, his wife Esme Sheila Matshikiza, and John Pogišo Maroo. This is through a reburial and funeral service at the Johannesburg City Hall. We understand now that General Secretary of the African National Congress, Fikile Mbalula, is on the podium. Let's listen in.
One, two, one, two. Amanda.
The General Secretary of the African National Congress there, Fikile Mbalula, setting up. He's just about to deliver that tribute on behalf of the African National Congress. And this is at the reburial of those distinguished compatriots. Let's listen in.
Long live. Long live Umkhonto wesizwe, long live. Long live the African National Congress, long live. Long live the ANC, long live. ANC lives. ANC lives. ANC lives. ANC leads. ANC leads. Amanda! Amanda! Thank you very much, Program Director, Comrade Hope Papo, Matshikiza and Maroo families, Minister Mukhwazi, Minister in the Presidency of Botswana, and a member of the family present with us here today. Comrade Jacob Mamabolo, Acting Premier of Gauteng Province. Former Ambassador Thembi Majola. Comrade Ilva Makay Langa, Secretary General of the ANC Veterans League. Comrade Bobo Mpemba, Umkhonto wesizwe Liberation War Veterans. Mr. John Mailabe from the National Prosecuting Authority. Representatives of the religious community and our chaplains of the province of the ANC and national chaplaincy of the ANC, and the chaplaincy of the South African Police Service in this official funeral to honor our departed and fallen heroes, veterans of our struggle, artists and cultural practitioners, comrades and compatriots, members of the African National Congress. We gather today with reverence and gratitude, laying to rest the mortal remains of one of our own, to the soil that shaped their conscience and summoned their courage. Comrade Todd Tozama Matshikiza and Comrade John Pogišo Maroo. We also lay to rest Mama Esme Sheila Matshikiza, whose ashes will be buried in the same coffin as her husband. In this sacred act of reburial, We do more than intermortal remains. We restore a chapter of our collective history. We infuse back into our national fabric and collective memory the lives of patriots whose journeys were born by apartheid's brutality. Through exile, imprisonment, banishment, and untimely death, and yet who never surrendered the march of freedom, the discipline of service, and the faith that the people shall govern. This is therefore, comrades, a homecoming of significant proportions. A homecoming that reunites a family with its ancestors and a nation with its memory. It is a profound moment of reflection for us, the living, to carry forward through their timeless memory the work of renewal, so that the African National Congress remains a leader of society, an effective instrument at the hands of the masses of our people to realize the vision of the Freedom Charter, that the people shall govern and that the people shall share in the country's wealth, and that political freedom without economic freedom is to have a hollow promise. Comrade Todd's life was fashioned at the intersection of discipline, faith, and artistry. Born in Komani in 1921 to a household where an organist father and a soprano mother filled the air with harmony. They learned early that music is both craft and calling, a teacher by vocation and a composer by destiny. He came of age in Johannesburg creative ferment, performing with the Merry Blackbirds and the Harlem Swingsters, helping to forge an urban sound that carried both joy and defiance. From Dokey House to Drum Magazine, Todd understood that culture is not an accessory to politics. It is a front line. In his celebrated column, his pen channeled his dreams and aspirations. A pen that made the city's heartbeat legible and the dignity of black life undeniable. History demanded of him to utilize his pen not as a substitute to the sword, for he knew the struggle was multifaceted. He knew the armed struggle had its place and that his contribution was through the might of the pen. His experience could therefore not perfectly fit into the saying that a pen is mightier than the sword. Those comrades were perilous times, of which every station in life was a calling. In the arts, on the streets, in schools, amongst youth organizations, the religious sector, and many more, carved their unique role in fighting the brutal system of apartheid. His compositions, Hamba Kahle, Mkhalipile, in honor of Father Trevor Huddleston, and the 7-part Uxolo, braided African rhythm with choral structure, were to create a language of moral insistence, a people's plea for freedom, unity, and justice. Then came King Kong. Here was an all-black South African musical that drew multiracial audiences in defiance of apartheid prohibitions, catapulting our talent to the world stage and announcing that the oppressed will narrate themselves with beauty, humor, and truth. When exile pushed the Matshikiza family to London and later to Zambia, Comrade Todd carried the struggle in his hands and in his voice. Researching and archiving African music, broadcasting, writing, and making the case that African modernity sings in many tongues but with one purpose: freedom. He left us in Lusaka in March 1968, not yet 47, but by then he had already composed a vocabulary for remembrance. Today we return him to the land of his birth, his ancestral home, to the echoes of a life well lived. In so doing, we declare that South Africa's freedom song has authors whose names must be spoken with reverence. Artists who shaped our political imagination and taught us to recognize one another as fully human. If Comrade Todd scored the soundtrack of freedom, Mama Sheila protected the archives, sustained the household of struggle, and cared for the community when the world looked away. Born in 1927, trained at the Jan Hofmeyer School of Social Work, she entered a vocation with a calm determination that turned compassion into institution building. As a young professional, she tended to families torn by forced removals. As a comrade in exile, she lent her skills to the ANC office in London, often unseen, always indispensable. When exile moved the family to Zambia and grief struck with Comrade Todd's sudden passing, Mama Sheila met widowhood with quiet fortitude. For 5 decades, she kept his manuscripts, scores, letters, photographs, and the beloved piano on which he wrote. By safeguarding a private archive, she preserved a public inheritance. Later, back in a democratic South Africa, after 31 years in exile, she returned to community work in the NGO sector, modeling a simple truth of our movement, that leadership is service without spectacle. She passed on in 2020 at the age of 92. And today we honor the family's wish that the ashes rest beside her beloved Todd, united in eternity. 2 lives interlaced in love, in art, and in the struggle. Mama Sheila represents a lineage of heroines whose labor does not always carry titles, but without whom history would have gone unrecorded. Children unfed, letters unsent, and courage unremembered, and have the story of our freedom untold. Our organizational renewal, comrades, requires that we see and sustain such labor, that we design our organizational culture to recognize the custodians of memory and care. Comrade John Maro was the embodiment of a patriot, a cadre of our revolutionary movement grounded in the commitment to the liberation of our country. Born in Paris in the Free State in 1825, in 1925, he found in the church both a spiritual home and a platform for organizing. In Alexander Township, he recruited youth to the ANC, sang hymns that shared space with freedom songs, and put his life on the line when the regime heightened its onslaught on the liberation movement. Detention without trial, solitary confinement, 12 grueling years on Robben Island. The scars he carried on his back were not only wounds, they were a testament of his resilience and dedication to the cause of our people. After release, the apartheid regime tried again to break him through banishment to Garankuwa and Mabopane, tearing him from his family's embrace. He stood tall, resolute, and will not break. In 1978, he crossed into exile with young recruits, including his 14-year-old daughter. Continuing organizational work in Botswana, later in Maseru, where he survived the 1982 massacre, and then in Lusaka. He died in Harare in 1989. Before he could witness the hoisting of a flag he spent his life fighting for, heralding the dawn of freedom and the birth of a democratic state. In 2012, his comrades honored him with the Medal of Honor as a first-generation veteran of the Luthuli detachment. His return to the soil today is a covenant with those who worked the long road, whose blood nourished the tree of freedom, but never lived to witness its realization. We will remember and forever cherish his selfless sacrifice. Comrades, this reburial takes place against the backdrop of significant challenges confronting the ANC. These are characterized by dramatic shifts in our political landscape, sharpening contradiction both domestically and internationally. On the domestic front, the electoral outcomes of the 2024 national and provincial elections plunged the movement into uncharted waters, a moment we characterized as a strategic setback for the national democratic revolution. The phrase that frames today's reburial is none other than the theme we adopted in our January 8 statement. The year of renewal to make the ANC a more effective instrument of the people to achieve the vision of the Freedom Charter. Comrades, this is not a slogan. It is a call to arms. It is a call on us to hold ourselves accountable to the best in our history and to grow worthy of the sacrifices we commemorate. The lives of these comrades light the path. The commitment to the ideals embodied in the Freedom Charter, as we celebrate 70 years since the adoption of this blueprint for our democracy, must become the lived reality of our people. The commitment to a better life for all must find practical expression in everything we do in all centers of state power. Our commitment to organizational renewal requires of the ANC to be responsive to the dreams and aspirations of the motive forces for progressive change. This renewal, comrades, demands that we restore a culture where the ANC's internal life is indistinguishable from the values that we proclaim. These values, people-centered, honesty, humility, integrity, and servant leadership must always define our movement and become central in our efforts to reverse the trust deficit with our people. Comrades, where there is corruption, we must uproot it. Where there is patronage, we must dismantle it. Where there is cynicism, we must answer with principled action. Our veterans did not endure prison and exile so that freedom could be exchanged for favor. We must be bold to say to those who use the name of our movement to enrich themselves by stealing from the poor and commit criminal acts not in our name. Even if a comrade can be your best friend, your best relative, not in our name. The apartheid regime tried to starve us of our own reflection. We responded with jazz clubs that became assemblies, with columns that became chronicles, with stages that became schools of citizenship. Organizational renewal traverses every aspect of political and social life across sectors. It requires of us to invest in the arts, in community archives, in cultural education for our youth. To honor Comrade Todd and Mama Sheila is to endow scholarships for black composers and music journalists, to preserve instruments and manuscripts, to expand cultural centers in Sophia Town, Alexander, and every township. Mama Sheila's life demonstrates that welfare is not charity. It is nation building. Renewal means strengthening social work, health outreach, and family services in communities bruised by poverty, migration, and violence. Our branches should be schools of empathy and efficiency, places where citizens encounter an organization that listens and delivers. Comrade John's journey from church hall to prison yard to exile shows the power of political education joined to moral formation. Renewal must therefore, comrades, entrench rigorous political education at every level, mentor young organizers, and protect women and youth in the movement from any form of an exploitation or harm. Discipline must be dignified, not domineering. Principled, not punitive. Both the Matshikiza and the Maro family moved through sanctuaries that doubled as sites of resistance. Renewal must deepen our alliance with the faith community, not as a constituency to be managed, but as co-authors of social healing, partners in rebuilding the moral campus of our nation. Our comrades who left these shores did not abandon South Africa. They carried her in their bones. Renewal in our time, comrades, requires that we reach across borders to diaspora to marshal skills, invest in knowledge sharing, while ensuring that the legacy of those who repatriate from foreign lands remain a beacon of inspiration for generations to come, both at home in the countries where they died as well. We must honor those countries with fitting monuments that they can continue to benefit from and integrate into their own histories as contributions to our collective struggles. To the Matshikiza family we say, your father, grandfather, brother, uncle composed more than scores. He composed courage. Your mother, grandmother, sister, aunt nurtured more than a household. She nurtured hope. Thank you for sharing them with our movement and a country that can never fully repay its debt. To the Maro family we say, your father, grandfather, brother, uncle carried scars that the eye could see and burdens that it could not. Thank you for standing watch through imprisonments, banishments, and border crossings. We welcome him home with a nation.
You're watching the Weekend Review here on SABC News. Good afternoon. You were watching the ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula. He's addressing the reburial ceremony for Todd Matshikiza, his late wife Esme Sheila Matshikiza, as well as John Pogišo Maroo. That reburial is taking place at the City Hall here in Johannesburg. Fikile Mbalula there reflecting on what the reburial represents as a moment for the ANC, and as far as some of the contemporary issues that are playing themselves out at the moment, including what he says are challenges of people who seek to enrich themselves in the name of the ANC. Making an emphatic message there is Fikile Mbalula that says ANC members must stand up and say, not in our name. Honoring those three there. Todd Matshikiza, who was a jazz musician but also a journalist of note during those years, initially of the drum generation, but also going on to play his role in the freedom struggle, as well as Esme Sheila Matshikiza, who was a social worker by training, but also humanitarian, also taking up her own station in the fight for freedom in this country in her own right. And of course, John Pogišo Maroo, a freedom fighter, youth activist, and also a former detainee on Robben Island. Those people being honored this afternoon, and Fikile Mbalula delivering that message at City Hall.